So once you get the Makerware program open, you're just going to select Add at the top, and you just need to locate where you saved that .stl file. So for me, I put it in 3D cars, and it was car prototype 6. And this pops up if your object is not on the platform, exactly on the platform, it'll warn you that. And you just select Move to Platform. And then I like to use some of these other tools as well on the side. So Look just lets you change the view. You can move around a little bit. I don't usually change that much. You can also do that at any time by right-clicking, and you can orbit around just like in SketchUp. And for each one of these, it took me a long time to realize this. If I just click on it once, I can move things around. If I click on Turn once, I can turn it. But what's more helpful is double-clicking. And for Move, you can make sure that it's on the platform, and I like to center it in the middle. And then Scale. Scale is definitely an important one to try double-clicking because you can set one of the scales to the exact dimension. So if your car was too large, let's say this was 131 millimeters, the event description says the car can be no longer than 127 millimeters. So I could just type that in, 127, and it scales the entire car to be that correct length. Once you've got your car positioned correctly and you've checked its scale to make sure it's within the requirements of the event, then you can move on to making it. And when you open this window, by default you may not actually see the advanced options. I usually leave that opened up so I can take a look at stuff. But you're going to export to the replicator too. You want to make sure you export to a file, and then you've got the different resolution settings. I normally actually recommend just leaving it on low. That will print faster because each layer is actually a little bit thicker. If you're having problems with the print, you may actually want to try upping it to standard or possibly even high, but these are significantly slower. And that's really what changes the speed of the print, the number of layers. So try it on low first. If you're having problems, you may want to try moving up to standard. I've really never had to print something at high. That does take a much longer time, so I would recommend lower standard. On the right, you've got the option for a raft. That's a layer of plastic underneath the model. It really uses a lot more plastic, and I haven't really seen much difference in success, so you can use that if you want. And then supports as well. I've had some issues with the supports actually causing the printer to jam, but it could be really useful if you've had some issues with the car where the plastic won't stay up. You may want to turn supports on. Basically, they're these thin little plastic sections that help hold up the car, and then you can chip them out or cut them out after it's finished printing. The infill percentage is a great way to change the mass of the car, or if you're working on your bridge project, it can change the strength of the bridge very easily. So infill is the amount of plastic inside, and it'll actually lay it down as a hexagon structure. And so normally by default it's 10%. I recommend anything from like 10 to 20%. 30% is actually very, very dense. So it goes all the way up to 100% where you'd have a solid block of plastic. But really 10 to 20% makes a big difference. Even something more up to 30% is very, very dense. Then the number of shells, that's the number of outer layers to your object. So that can make a difference as well. By default, again, it's 2 shells. That makes a pretty good outer layer, but if you want to try 3 layers, especially for something like the bridge, that may really add some strength to your bridge. Temperature by default is 230. You may want to try experimenting with that a little bit. PLA usually melts anywhere above 200, so if you're having some issues, you may want to try a lower temperature, but I normally leave that as default. And then the speed. Speed while extruding, that's as it's actually spitting out the plastic, and then while it's traveling around from place to place, when it's not spitting out the plastic, it goes a little bit faster. This may be helpful to reduce if you're having issues printing as well. By default 90 is pretty fast, but slowing it down will actually help it be a little bit more accurate and may keep the layers sticking together a little bit better, so you could try experimenting with that as well. Once you've done all of that, you'll need to insert your SD card into your computer. You're going to click on Export, and you'll select your SD card from the side menu, and then you'll give yours a name, and you'll see it saved as an x3g file. That's the file type that the printer can actually read. So you'll just click on Save, and it takes a little while. It slices it. That's all the different layers of the car, and it'll verify that just to kind of double check everything. And then finally it'll print it to a file that the printer can read. Click on your Safely Remove Hardware, Find your SD card and eject it. And once you see safe to remove, you can take the SD card and put it in the printer, and you should be ready to print.